inviting me. And again, hello to everyone in the QA group here. I'm very thrilled to be here. And before we jump to the presentation, I wanted to show you something because today I want to talk to you a little bit about bugs. Now, bugs can be in any part of a system under test, like here. And if you have 2 bugs in the system, there might as well be 3. And our job as test professionals is not only to find those bugs, but also to get them eliminated one by one, like so. One by one. So in the end, the system under test can be completely usable again. And there is a specific reason why I start with this. And this will become apparent during the presentation. So I hope you can all see my screen now.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So yeah, let's start. Magicians have done controlled testing in human perception for thousands of years. And that is a quote by Teller, a famous magician of the magic duo Penn and Teller. And with that, I think there's a perfect lead in to the presentation. So there are really a lot of things I would like to talk about today. A short introduction for people who don't know me, which might be probably all of you. Give you a short glimpse into magic and into the magic world. And then jump into 9 magic principles that I make a connection with to software and some final thoughts. So without further ado, let's see, that is the obligatory About Me slide. I'm Benjamin Bischoff, a test automation engineer at Trivago in Düsseldorf, Germany. This is where I'm currently sending from. And I've been 22 years in tech, the first 15 years as a full-time developer, and the last 7 as a software development engineer in testing. And this is where now my true destination, my true passion is. And my all-time mission is to transfer software craftsmanship principles and clean code design into software testing. But there's another side, as you've seen, on the magic side of me. I started magic at the age of 8. I will turn 44 this year, so you see that I've been doing that for a long time. I love doing card magic. This is really difficult to do that like to a camera, but in the end, I will try to do 1 card effect if we have time to the camera. And member of the Magic Circle is crossed out. I used to be a member of the Magic Circle until July, but this is a completely different story. I didn't agree with the principles of the Magic Circle, so I could probably do a completely different talk about this. This presentation came about because I gradually noticed similarities between magic and software, and I also did a series of blog posts on my blog, softwaretester.blog, and also created a YouTube channel with some software-themed magic videos, in case you're interested. Those 2 books inspired me too. Darwin Ortiz's Strong Magic and Juan Tamariz, The 5 Points in Magic. Those are 2 books on magic theory that really sparked me to think about the connection between magic and software. And especially the 5 Points in Magic book that is also about psychology and why magic works in people's brains. So this is something that is really useful when developing software and testing software as well. And spoiler, it's all about making connections, but I will close the circle in the end. short glimpse into the magic world in case you didn't really have this as a hobby yet. I would strongly recommend starting this. This is my favorite definition of magic, is the artful performance of impossible things that generates energy, delight, and wonder. And this delight and wonder is what drives my magic, and not really this look at me, what I can do, but this inspiring people and making people wonder. But you can get also more technical in terms of magic. You can have the taxonomy of magic. Those are a lot of magic genres we have on, not all of them, but you see that there is really a lot. And once you start, you go down this rabbit hole, and you read a lot, you watch a lot, and it's really too much to handle. You see, I highlighted the close-up magic portion, which is my passion. And here are also some illusion types. So basically all of magic can be really condensed into those illusion types, like productions and vanishes, like I did with the coins. That's productions and vanishes. You have teleportations, you have escapes, like when you look at Harry Houdini, for example, he was famous for escapes. Interesting about this is that you can also combine different illusion types into others. So a teleportation, which is turning one object into another, can also be seen as a vanish of the first object and a production of the second. So we could even compress this further down. Some important documents of magic. Yeah, I could talk hours about magic. So I really want to just pinpoint some things. The left one, 1700 to 2000 before Christ, is the so-called Westcar papyrus, which is an Egyptian papyrus that has descriptions of magic and magicians that performed on the court of King Cheops in Egypt. And there are even some magic effects described here. A big leap forward into the year 1584, Reginald Scott released The Discovery of Witchcraft, and probably saved many, many lives with this, because he explained magic effects in this book. And his intention was that if you knew that magic was not real and could be performed with natural means, the whole persecution of witches would stop. And it helped to do that. And the one on the right is called Hocus Pocus Junior. I still love this title. And this came out in 1674 and was the first book really about magic as entertainment. So what we know and how we see magic today. One of my personal influences, and yes, I realized those are 3 white men. I'm sorry for that, but magic used to be a predominantly male field. This is changing now, but that's how it used to be. And I hope this will change even more in the future. So on the left is Di Vernon, the king of close-up magic, the king of card magic. So everything that you could ask every magician performing today, they will do something that Di Vernon discovered or invented. Tony Slidini in the middle is very interesting. He didn't have access to magic literature, really, so he single-handedly invented his own style of magic and his own style of misdirection, which is also something that many magicians do today. And Juan Tamariz from Spain, he is the one that authored the 5 Points in Magic and is one of the most influential magicians still today, because he writes a lot of books about magic and psychology, and every magician in the world looks up to him. And this quote is a very famous one by the writer Arthur C. Clarke. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, which brings us right into the magic principles in software. Misdirection. That is probably one that everyone is familiar with. I put the mis in parentheses because it can only be, it can also be a direction to a specific point that people should look at. It doesn't always have to be something that people should look away from. And the goal of misdirection is to mislead, but not to confuse the spectators. And we have two major principles here. The large action covers the small. Like with the coins, if I do a movement with one hand, a large movement, you won't see what I'm doing with the other hand. But the opposite can also be true. If I direct you to a small point, also with the coins, you won't see a large movement with the other hand. But there can also be misdirection in software, especially when analyzing a bug. You can get misdirected. You can sometimes not see the wood for the trees, as we say, because there might be just too much information or too little information for you to find the cause of a bug. And there can also be unintentional misdirection through bad software design. An example is this. If you program in Java or some other language that leaves large stack traces around, there are some problems with this. In this example, it's just exposing too much information. So it's really hard to find the root cause of things. It's really hard to stay in the perimeter of the error. Or the opposite can also be true, that you stare at a specific section of such a stack trace, but you don't direct your eyes to the correct location, so you don't really see the bug. Or again, the opposite can be true. If a stack trace is so condensed that it doesn't give you enough information, that's what we call swallowing exceptions, so that you don't have a chance to find the cause. Yeah, Harry Houdini said, what the eyes see and the ears hear, the mind believes. That is something that is very true in software, that is very true in magic. The next one is a tough one. That's called force. And force is not a physical force. It's in magic giving the illusion of a free choice. You can force numbers, you can force cards, you can force thoughts, locations, everything you can imagine. The key is that the spectator believes he or she had a free choice. But there's another aspect of it, which is forcing yourself. And I put this smiley next to it because I was guilty of that myself, both as a magician and as software developer and tester. This is just forcing yourself onto others, onto other teams, forcing a solution you like onto others without really knowing the problem. And this is exactly what happens in software. Like if you start learning a tool, a test tool, a framework, and you love that, you try to solve everything with this, and you end up in this Maslow's hammer situation that you want to solve everything with the software or the tool you like. And also, this forcing yourself on others can mean you look down on others, you talk down to others because they are maybe not as knowledgeable as you are in this specific section. What you cannot forget is that those people, whoever you talk to, they will have much superior knowledge in a different field. So never do that, especially when presenting. Yeah, because the more you know, the more you realize you know nothing. And that is exactly how I define a senior or an expert. Those are just the people who realize they know nothing. Instead of thinking like when you start out that you know everything and the others are stupid. That's never a good start. Let's go to repetition. We are already at the third principle of magic. And repetition, as you all might realize, is a means of perfection. When you do something repeatedly, when you practice something, that makes perfect, but only if you practice the correct things. In magic, there are a lot of YouTube videos that show you effects and how they're done, and most of them are done by people who just learned them, like maybe half of it, and then they try to teach it, and then you learn the wrong way. So this is, if you want to start out with magic, this is not a good way to learn through YouTube. And in magic, we also have rules, like best practices in software. And one of those rules says never repeat a trick. Because obviously, the more you repeat a trick, the easier it is to find out. But some effects are there that break this rule. You have to ask yourself, is your effect easy to figure out? If it's not, maybe repeating makes it stronger. If you can achieve the same effect with different methods, that is worth repeating. Yeah, and like I said, is it worth repeating? Is it a good effect? If it's not, why do it? And why do it multiple times? In software, we have kind of the same thing, because in regression testing, repetition is key. Because we're doing the same thing, we're testing the same thing over and over. And it doesn't matter if this is in an automated way or going through test scenarios. I hate this word, manually. I really dislike manual testing. I would rather call it exploratory testing. It's always exploration we're doing, even with the aid of automation. So that's what I would prefer. Yeah, and what's the benefit of repeating test scenarios? Is spotting behavior changes and spotting changes in the system, and also ensuring a state of the system we want to have. Another aspect of it, like in magic, is you can use repetition as training. There is a thing called katas. You have code katas and testing katas. Those are small programming problems that you can practice and create a solution for. And after that, you throw away your solution. You come back to the same problem sometime later. And I promise you, you will find a more elegant solution. And this is a way to practice programming. Like musicians practice music, magicians practice effects. In monitoring, this is also very, very important. We actually use something called synthetic monitoring at Trivago, which is taking a test scenario, a long one, with a happy path through the application and letting it run continuously, like every few minutes. And this we found is more effective than any other means of monitoring, because there you really find out, is the application usable, and not just is some web service down. Yeah, if you wouldn't repeat in monitoring, it would just be a one-time snapshot that can be valuable, but most value from monitoring comes from repetition. And this is my favorite quote from Bruce Lee. He said, "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times." So rather focus on something to make perfect than focusing on everything and doing a little bit of it, of everything, but not as good. Clarity. That should be an obvious one for software. For magic, it means keeping the effect clear, like with the coins. The clarity of the effect is that 3 coins appear, 3 coins disappear. It should be always easy to follow and understand. And very important, you should establish an initial state so that the changes in the state can be recognized. If I just hold my fist up and say, there's a coin in it, and I will make it disappear, and then I open my hand, you are probably not impressed because you haven't seen the initial state. But if I show you the coin first, then close my fist, then make it disappear, that's completely different. When we take clarity to the software and especially the testing world, it can mean keeping your test scenarios compact, keeping them clear and keeping them so that you can focus. It should be always easy to link the cause and effect. Like I showed you in the stack trace, if something goes wrong, it should be really obvious where something went wrong. And if you have to look at that regularly, when something goes wrong, you have to look at logs and reports. It should be compact because you avoid boredom. You don't want to go through pages and pages of the same log every time, but you want to be able to pinpoint what's wrong. And also that helps in keeping focus and not just dozing off and falling asleep. In reporting, this is also apparent. A report should be clear, it should be concise. You should be able to directly see the test results. All the relevant information should be there on first glance. And yeah, like I said, concise, same structure across all projects. For us, we use this reporting library that was started here at Trivago as an open source project. Behind the QR code, you will find it. It's an open source reporting library for Cucumber-based tests. And we started this project because we weren't satisfied with the clarity aspect of other reporting solutions. Because, as one of my magic heroes, Di Vernon, that I showed you before, said, confusion is not magic. If you see a magic effect and after that you are very confused as to what really happened, that is not magic. But if you can tell what has happened in one sentence, that's a good magic effect. Number 5, framing. Framing in magic and framing also in life means finding the context. In magic, that means finding the context for a magic effect. You have 2 different kinds of contexts. You have the contented context and you have the situational context. The contented context means that you adapt an effect or a presentation or whatever you want to do to the context, to sorry, not the context, but the situation you're in and the audience you have. Like I did with the coins, I talked about finding bugs and eliminating bugs. That is not something you can do at a child's birthday party, for example, because it just does not fit. And also, if you put some meaning behind an effect, it elevates it beyond just a puzzle. If I show you a coin and make it disappear, your reaction might be, oh, how did that happen? I want to find out. But if I talk about bugs and eliminating bugs, your reaction hopefully was not, oh, how's this done? But, oh, yeah, that's cool. And the situational context means it must fit the setting and occasion and location. So it's more about how you dress. It's about the type of effect you do. Like, I wouldn't in the first version of this talk, I did a rope effect, which is a stage effect, which would not fit in this tiny zoom window here. So that's also what you have to think about. In software, that means you have to frame your ideas and your goals. Because if you have a good intention, if you have a good idea for a product or a test strategy or something like that, it is not enough. You have to be able to phrase it properly, or it can really fail. So this is exactly what happened to us. To give you a little bit of background, we had a test automation team at Trivago when I started 6 years ago. And this test automation team was newly formed. So it was a third entity between the QA team and developers. And QA and developers had very good communication already, but the test automation team, they did not really talk with either of them. There was a lot of bias between the automation team and QA and the automation team and the developers. We were very focused on providing testing solutions without knowing about the problems. So what I talked about before, we were forcing ourselves. We were looking down from this ivory tower. We were detached from the people and what they really needed. And we forgot to communicate the why. This has changed because the test automation team does not exist anymore. It's now included in the QA team. So we are much closer to the customers. We have much better communication, but this is something you have to think about, how you frame things. Yeah, the House of Magic has many rooms. That is a quote that is related to how you present effects and how you present ideas, because you have many rooms in the House of Magic, many different ways how you can present effects. Time-lapse. Time-lapse is just the time between two separate events. And time-lapse is a form of misdirection, sometimes not a very good form, because if I put a coin in my hand and then wait 2 hours and open my hand and it's gone, well, you are probably all asleep. So the longer it is, the less clear it is. Also, it can be too short, of course. If I have a coin, close my hand, it's gone, then you might have missed it. In software, that is especially important when doing reporting and monitoring, because it has to be on time. If the report that something failed comes in the next day, or the result of a CI/CD pipeline that something failed comes in at the end after 15-20 minutes, it is way too late. It's hard for reporting and monitoring to arrive too early, but you can also have false negatives if that happens. So if reporting and monitoring right after a deployment tells you there's something wrong, it might be because some cache hasn't warmed up or something else needs to happen. So it can also be too early, but most of the time it is too late. Timing is really important. Yeah, in test feedback, that's what I meant with the CI/CD pipelines. If your tests run only at the end, or if they run in the beginning, but reporting is only at the end, that is way too late. And this is where the shifting left approach comes in, which means testing earlier, testing more often, testing in multiple stages, and informing the right people right away if something fails. Because nothing is worse than having an information that something failed and then having to dig up through all the logs of the pipeline and talking to all different people to find out what might have happened. And if something fails, it should fail fast so you can learn fast from it. And it is crucial to have fast communication channels as well. Because if you know that something specifically failed and you cannot reach the people that are able to fix it, that also means nothing. And Albert Einstein actually said the only reason for time is so that everything does not happen at once. We are moving fast now. Conviction, number 7. And conviction is related to the spectators of a magician being convinced of an initial state. Like I said before, the coin in the hand, you have to know, you have to believe it's there in order to appreciate that it's gone. And especially in magic, it's better to convince implicitly. And that means if I give you a deck of cards and say, this is a perfectly normal, ordinary deck of cards, it will raise suspicion. But if I just hand you a deck of cards without saying anything, you just assume it's a perfectly normal deck of cards. And this is the first one is what magicians call overproofing. In software, conviction is stronger than assumptions. You might have heard before, don't assume anything, which is totally true. You should never assume. You should always ask to be convinced of an initial state. And the intention of a system has to be clear to detect when it's not doing what it's intended. And this is where behavior-driven development actually comes in and where it has gotten its idea from. That means that the team and all different roles of a team get together and define the goals and the behaviors of a system first, so everyone is clear what to do. So the developers know what to develop, the testers know what to test, the product owners know exactly what the product is supposed to do. And this is to raise the conviction level. In communication, we have that too. We should trust that everyone on the team give their best work and also work towards the same cause. Because if that doesn't happen, if you're not convinced that is happening, if you're not trusting your team, that is really, really bad. And for this, it's really important to get everyone on the same page. Like I showed you with the test automation team being separated, that's not good. Get everyone on the same page, communicate why something should be done, ask people, get their opinions, and then do it. And speak a ubiquitous language. That means a language that everyone understands. If you talk too technical to a product owner, for example, that's not good. If you don't have the right language to talk to a developer or vice versa, this is also not very helpful. And this is always something that you should do, especially when presenting. We estimate the intelligence of the audience as being greater than ours. Never assume that the people you talk to are more stupid than you. Not a good basis. Second to last one, it's failure. And failure in magic has two separate meanings. One is a stylistic device. That means you have something that we magicians call the magician in trouble plot, where something goes wrong, apparently, and you fix it by magic. That is something that can be done to present an effect differently. But also, like in other disciplines, it's always beneficial to analyze your failed performances. And even when you have been doing magic for a long time, there will be failures. There will be situations where something goes completely wrong. And it's really good to analyze those performances and to learn from them. And in software, especially for testing, that means don't trust a test that never failed before. I can give you countless examples of tests that kept on running and were always successful until we found out they are not testing the thing that we want them to test, and they would never fail. So check if a test really fails. It's also the essence of test-driven development. In case you are not aware of what that is, it's writing unit tests first before writing the implementation, so that you have a clear expectation from the tests what the system should do or what a specific method should do, and then you write the code for this specific method until your test passes. That is especially helpful in API design or anything that has connections to the outside. And also, like learning from failed performances. If something fails in a system, in a software, it should always be covered with a test afterwards. So you are covered, you are prepared that this failure cannot happen in future implementations. There's also a way to present those failures. We have post-mortems regularly where we present what went wrong in a specific case, and we present failures and lessons learned from processes in programming. You can do that with a lot of stuff. And for me, it's one of the best tools to improve and to learn from other mistakes and what was done about this. So that improves everybody. And it's not good to, if you fail, to just hide it. Yeah, Thomas Edison said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." But eliminating all the ways that won't work will eventually leave you with a way that will work. The last one I want to talk about is hidden complexity. In magic, that means hiding your skills, because magicians don't want to look like it's super hard what they're doing. They want it to look like they are doing nothing, and ideally it should look like the magic is happening on its own without the magician interfering. And in software, there are multiple aspects of hidden complexity. It can mean only showing choices to users when those choices are really needed, not overwhelming your users. In terms of stack traces, don't propagate stack traces to the front end. I've seen that happening before with some APIs, which is really bad. And also make error messages meaningful and actionable. So tell users what went wrong and how this can be fixed, instead of just saying an error occurred, sorry, try it again later. And in UI, that can just mean limiting options for better user experience. This is a snippet of the Trivago website, and you see the minus buttons are grayed out and the reset button is grayed out because it's not needed at this very moment. And this will also lead to easier testing, because if you have limited options, you need less tests, you need less path to cover. Because the function of good software is to make the complex appear to be simple. Grady Booch said that, a software engineer, and I totally agree. This is an example of our test runs. The portion above was using Maven to run our tests with tons of options, a huge command to start the test. And by putting a proxy in front of this, a make file in this case, we were able to shrink this down to a very meaningful command that we can use locally and in CI/CD systems without exposing everything that is going on under the hood. And this is one of my favorite definitions of quality in this regard by Stuart Crocker. He says, quality is the absence of unnecessary friction. And this is all that simplification is about. So I want to give you some quick final thoughts. Why can all this be helpful? It sparks creativity. If you think about relations of your hobby, of your passion to your to something you earn money with, like magic and software development, or certain books and testing, or movies, or whatever you might have as a hobby, it's beneficial. It's really, really satisfying if you find those connections. And it can also help breaking out of programmer's block, of tester's block. If you don't know how to proceed, try thinking about this from a different angle. And I really encourage you to try it with your own hobbies and interests. A magician is not a magician because he knows tricks, but because he knows magic, the principles, the fundamentals. The more you know, the more you think about something, the more solutions and angles to look at it you will find. An example from our day-to-day work, we have regular knowledge exchanges in the QA team, where everybody is encouraged to share some topics. And it's interesting that half of the topics that are shared are completely non-technical, and a quarter of the topics are completely unrelated to software and testing, but are just topics that people want to present out of their private life, their hobbies, their travels. And it sounds strange, but this really helps our job if we hear something like this. Magic is purely a means of communication. And I think software is also a means of communication, and working as a tester and as a developer, that relies on communication. Yeah, best practices, that is something I dislike. I dislike the term best practices because there are no best practices for every situation. They can be adjusted, they can be turned upside down, like I told you about the magic effect and the repetition. Some magic effects need to be repeated to be good. So sometimes it's better to break the rules. In magic today, as always, the effect is what counts. The method or methods used are always purely secondary. Don't force your solutions on others. Think about what makes sense. The solution in the end does not matter that much. Yeah, and this is, like I said, in the spoiler alert in the beginning, making connections is the thing, is the intention of this whole talk. And with this, I want to thank you again for having me. And I want to try, hope you see me again. I want to try one last quick thing with cards. Hope you can see those. This is about when you want to find a bug, find an issue in a system you don't normally work with. You can just guess where the issue might be, but that can also mean you're entirely wrong. And that can get really, really confusing, especially when the issue is not in one place, but can be in multiple places. And it's especially confusing, like in a microservice infrastructure, when you think the issue is over here, when in reality, it's way over here. So you always have to analyze the problem, ask the right questions, talk to the right people, because otherwise the solution might be in a place that you least expect. And with that, thank you again for having me. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If you don't, I hope you liked it. If you didn't like it, please don't tell other people. Thanks a lot.
Benjamin, one comment. I like the presentation. I like the talk, definitely. I just caught myself thinking that I'm a QA lead, and always when my teammates would say like, wow, this is some magic, like I don't understand why this bug appears, I always told them, guys, there is no magic in software. Now I heard like complete lesson stating another way. But what I will add now, I would say like there is no magic it's in software, but there are definitely difficult tricks, but we definitely need to solve them or resolve. So thank you again for the lesson.
Thank you. I think the most important thing for me is to make it as easy as possible for the users. In our case, as test automation engineers, make it easier for testers to use what we're doing and to solve exactly the problems they have, without forcing ourselves. I think that was the hardest lesson to learn. And I would agree, there is definitely magic in software, and there's a lot of software I don't understand how it can work.
What is the program language are you using for your automation?
For our automation, we mainly use Java. Sometimes it depends on what we are automating. There is also Python used in some parts of the company. There's also JavaScript used, but in the core QA team, the main language is Java. And that's another thing I disagree with a lot of people, is that the language of test automation does not necessarily have to be the language of the application you're testing. That's what I believe.
Yeah, that's true. I agree also. Thanks.
Sure.
So thank you so much, everyone.